Hello World Wide Web, I'm Shado, the internet personality with the best hair, and this time on...
The Summer of Freddy vs. Jason!
We bring the Friday the 13th series to a close with Friday the 13th, the final chapter. You do realize they made 8 movies after this, right? Of course I know, I'm just trying to leave that as a surprise. The fucking thing came out in 1984, you shit! The point is, while Friday the 13th was a super mega awesome series worth ass tons of money, it also looked to be going downhill quite sharply with Part 3, so not only did they spend 2 years producing this movie, but the gimmick this time around is it is the last of the series. Which it very clearly wasn't. And I don't know why this would be that big of a shock to anyone, considering today they just get all hyped up over the fact that they might kill the main character, forgetting the fact that if they do, they'll just clone the bitch and make another movie anyway. But as the idea is that this would be the last chapter in some story or another, there are elements to bring that about. The story follows 3 distinct groups: a small family that lives out by the lake, quiet and unassuming, a lone hunter who has just arrived in these parts, tracking some suspicious prey, and of course, the giant fucking group of teenagers who have nothing to do with anything but are really good at getting killed. Also drinking, smoking pot, and having sex. So, let's take a look at Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and see the many, many ways it still manages to end on sequel bait. The movie opens up to the previous movies! This is actually kind of a weird introduction. It's set up like the speech that Paul gave at the beginning of Part 2, or the sort of first act, you know what I mean, giving the backstory of Jason Voorhees, but it's also got kills from all 3 movies spliced into it. Yes, he's telling the story of how these people got killed before they got killed, and to several of the people who got killed. Somebody call up James Randi for this shit. Anyway, once that's done, we return to the set of Friday the 13th Part 3 to clear out all the movie props and pick up all the pieces of teenager lying around everywhere.
What's wrong with him? He's dead. Yeah, they're all dead. You can pull it up over there.
All dead. Some emergency.
Now, don't try to act like you were rushing or anything. The cops took Chris to the nut house in the morning and the bodies were still on the ground at the time, so you waited at least 12 hours before you bothered to show up. And we know they've been lying that long because Jason's corpse is in the same place it was earlier. That is, until they pick it up. Sorry, dear black character in the beginning of a horror movie. It gets slasher villains really excited. She will not be the first to go, though. Not that they're bucking trends or anything with this movie, as it's still extremely obvious who is going to be the first to die here. The insufferable prick coroner character, Axel, played by Bruce Mahler. For some reason, a lot of movies seem to think that the only people who would work with the dead for a living would be the kinds of folks who are just so intolerant to be around. You just can't. You just can't. Living, you're just like, no, bring me the dead. Except maybe the nurse over here, I think. Or not. It's establishing the fact that he's going to die in 2 ways. One, he's engaged in sexual conduct, which of course is a huge red flag in a slasher movie. Second, he's so much of a dickhead, it doesn't matter she's a young woman in a horror movie, she actually refuses to have sex with him.
Hey, where are you going?
I'll tell you where I'm going! I'm going crazy!
And after that, I'm going to acting college! So Nurse Morgan, played by Lisa Freeman, does something far more entertaining than sex. Inventory! Which means Axel has nothing left to please himself to other than some 80s leotard ass dance exercise routines. Oh, and the kickoff of the body count. Aw, Jason, if you pulled it back, you could have turned the guy into a pest dispenser. But it's Jason's job to dish out the treats. Or tricks? Oh, fuck it, he guts the nurse like a fish. Cutting her open so profoundly, it actually cuts to a completely different scene. Introducing the mother and daughter, Tracy and Trish Jarvis, played by Joan Freeman and Kimberly Beck, respectively. They live out in the middle of the woods by the lake, of course, along with Trish's younger brother, Tommy, played by Corey Fieldman. I also just noticed the whole family has names that start with T. Except their dog, I guess, Gordon, but he's not here right now.
Someone left the front door open.
We're in the country.
Well, what happens if the psycho wanders in?
Run upstairs and scream until he finds you? Oh hell, they've got the best anti-psycho security system on the planet. A big-ass group of teenagers coming down there to move into the house across the street. Yeah, they happen to have one. No idea why, but it sure is convenient all of a sudden. This introduces an ass-ton more characters, such as the awkward, hopeless romantic Jimmy, played by Crispin Glover, and his friend, the comic relief douchebag Ted, played by Lawrence Moneson.
It says you're a dead fuck. What? A dead fuck?
It seems a roundabout way of saying it. I'd just go ahead and tell you you're all fucking dead. Rather, he means Jim can't get a girl because he sucks in bed. I guess it is pretty disappointing when you simply haven't had sex, but more importantly, they're all lost. So they stop at the graveyard just in case.
Pretty creepy, huh? Yeah.
Right by Pamela Voorhees' gravestone, which says she died in 1979 and not 1980, even though the first movie came out in 1980, and it was said to be set in present day, and on June 13th, which was supposed to be Friday the 13th, which it was in 1980. However, if they switch it to 1979, where it's Wednesday the 13th, and they just decided to call it Friday the 13th for shits and giggles, then, when it was 5 years later, in Friday the 13th Part 2, that's 1984, and this one, along with the previous one, only takes place a couple of days after that. Therefore, this movie that came out in 1984 came out at the same year the movie's set in. Yay! Wednesday the 13th. They got their bearings soon enough and even passed by a hitchhiker, played by Bonnie Hellman. I gotta get that out of the way really quickly because... Jason just isn't fucking around anymore. Maybe he's actually concerned that this might be the last movie. It still takes the teens until nightfall before they reach their new house, which it really doesn't look like they're all moving into, considering they have no boxes outside of a big-ass case of beer. While the Jarvis family introduces themselves, they really don't spend all that much time with a big group of teenagers, so instead we peek inside to introduce them the old-fashioned way, such as Sarah, the modest girl played by Barbara Howard, and Judy Aronson, who plays Samantha, the slut. I'm just saying, according to the character traits given in the film...
You do it with everybody.
I mean, no one's gonna get on my back for referring to Jason as a murderer at any point, are they? Actions do speak louder than words, of course, so Samantha gets butt-ass naked and begins doing it by the window in full view of Tommy from his bedroom. So cute and funny, and not at all dark and disturbing, based on knowing what Corey went through in his childhood. No, not at all. They haven't done enough to summon the killer to this banquet, though, so the next day the group heads out to find the lake. They also run into more characters.
Oh my... Sorry.
Tina and Terry, played by Camila and Carrie Moore. And they're twins! Like actual, real, identical twins. They're not just two women that they dress the same like some movies do. They also happen to be going down to the lake, too. As they let the group know it's a long walk, Sarah turns around to retrieve the car while the rest of them continue onward. Now that she's alone, the darkness filter sets in, and she is unprepared for the surprises ahead. Oh god, a tree! Who would have never known that there were trees in the woods? Ah, never mind, they already made it! Transitions are for pussies. The whole group of teens have reached the lake and are splashing around with their newfound friends and, well, you know where this is going.
Skinny dip!
It's like they're pulling out all the psycho killer lures today. And who would happen to show up but Trish and Tommy? Because, well, they're in this movie too.
Tommy, turn around. Oh, come on, can't I just turn around?
Of course, they didn't actually film Corey watching all the other actors running around naked. I mean, it probably would have helped in method acting, but I'm also pretty sure the rest of them wouldn't have been too comfortable with it. They showed up just long enough to let the teens know that they will not be participating in the skinny dipping extravaganza, and then they leave. Man, that felt like a needed scene. However, on the way back, the car realizes it's in a horror movie and stalls.
Can you fix it?
Bitch, he's 10 years old! Somehow he's more competent at this than Trish, however, but fortunately we find out that the random motherfucker on the street is even better than both of them combined, taking over this operation.
You need a lift?
Wait. If it was a problem with the starter, then... Well, how did the car stall in the first place? It was already running. Point is, we introduce the Wanderer, Rob, played by Eric Anderson. He's not from around here either, but doesn't plan to stay long. He's got a bear hunt to get to.
You can't be hunting for bear.
How about kids? Are any kids, vacationers?
Whoa, Rob! Watch where your sentences veer off to, man! Jesus! But there aren't any bears around here. Still, this topic is dropped immediately so they can take the strange man who seems interested in killing kids and vacationers home with them and right up to Tommy's room so he can show off all those cool things that Tom Savini helped put together for this movie. I get the feeling that Tommy was just an excuse for the whole visual effects team to throw their entire portfolio into the film, just in case this really was the last movie. But it's nighttime at the teens' house of... you know what, fuck trying to figure out how or why they got this house. It's teens in a slasher movie, and they're having a drunken party, because of course! With that in mind, Jimmy invites one of the twins to dance with him, so he can wow her with his dazzling style.
Don't think you got it made, no. You're wrong.
Crispin! The fuck are you doing? I mean, I know a lot of people out there already know that the original song that you were dancing to in that scene was Back in Black, but... I think if we're being honest here, it really doesn't help all that much.
Hey, how come you turned that off?
Oh, he's just trying to make sure you'll still have a career after this movie. Douchebag Ted is busy trying to get in with the other twin, and yeah, they're identical, so fuck differentiation right now. Problem is, he's terrible at it, so instead she goes over to Paul, played by Clyde Hayes, to try her luck there.
Kiss me, you fool.
Certainly.
Only to have him stolen away by Samantha. Where the hell is Jason? I can't stand this kiss and tell bullshit.
Maybe we could dance to this one.
Yeah, please do. Back with Trish and Rob, it seems she's helping him on his quest to hunt by pointing out the trail that goes down to the lake. With that, he leaves the movie for a while, and it's back to As the Machete Turns. The tension between Samantha and the twins are high, so she declares she's going out for a swim as a means to tempt Paul to follow. As luck would have it, their homes somehow teleported about 40 feet or so from the lakeside, making this trip a hell of a lot faster. Wanting to lure Paul out to her, she disrobes, despite the fact there's little way he would be able to tell, and then gets frustrated when he doesn't run right out to get her.
Screw you, Paul.
Very disappointing indeed. Most women in slasher movies get a good, "Ah! What the hell was this? Oh, this, my God, this is mildly uncomfortable, sir." Paul can't just ditch his girl for one of the twins, though. He's got some drunken, horny teenage principles. Thus, he rushes out in the night after her, while Jimmy takes the other twin upstairs, leaving Ted high and dry. On the plus side, Ted's doing a lot better than Paul, finding out his lay has been laid out, which of course doesn't end all that well for him either. Stabbed in the dick, impaled, and then lifted in the air by the impaled dick. Fucking shitballs! Hearing the much higher-pitched screaming, Rob rushes out to find out what's amiss, only finding nothing and returning to his tent to discover that someone has been here and destroyed his guns. Ah well, no reason to let that get you down when Jimmy's using his awkward charms to woo one of the twins. Either that or they're just both incredibly drunk.
Tina, you gotta go.
Okay, so that's Tina and that's Terry. Got it. Somehow they weren't planning on spending the night with the big house of drunken teenagers, but Tina tells her sister she should just go home without her. So she goes into the stormy night alone. Okay, at this point I'm thinking that half the time Jason's just sitting around outside a frame like, okay, I use the saw, I use the knife, Oh, shadows! Sarah finally decides who she's going to pair up with based on who hasn't had sex yet and who's left alive. Doug, played by Peter Barton. Things aren't all sunshine, rose petals, and fuckery, though. Well, they are in this house, but next door, Tracy is coming home to discover that somehow the power is out. Rather than go to the fuse box to fix the problem, she starts calling out to her children to see if they're home, eventually wandering back outside into the storm and slowly sneaking around her own house, whispering for them. have to admit, Mrs. Jarvis, that was a pretty sudden transition, and I was honestly shocked too. This is Trish and Tommy coming back from somewhere. Also, have a random bra and panty scene in there. Okay, back to Trish and Tommy coming home, discovering the power is out and their mother is nowhere to be found. Trish fears her mother might have suffered a horrific jogging accident and springs to action.
I'm going out on the path.
Me too.
No, you stay here in case she comes back.
I'll go!
Stay here and fix the lights.
Mom didn't send you to engineering kindergarten for nothing, so hop to it! With that, she runs out onto the path and, of course, can't find any sign of her mother, but she does find Rob's tent. And in her desperate search for any sign of the woman, decides to sit down inside the thing for a few minutes.
What the hell are you doing here?
What are you trying to do? Kill me?
It has been a couple of minutes since the last kill, so, come on, movie, keep the body count rolling. So we teleport away from the important shit to find out that after boning Tina, Jimmy himself has evolved into a fucking douchebag, bragging about his conquest to Ted before going off to get even more drunk, despite how surly he already is.
Ted! Hey, Ted, where the hell's the corkscrew?
And damn! Oh yeah, he earned it at this point, but still, Jason's got no fucking chill! Also, I'm questioning just how satisfying an experience Tina had, considering she's already getting up and getting dressed. I guess she's just going to have to wait for another man to come and sweep her off her feet. Good. Yeah, she died and now they gotta call State Farm, but at least at this point I can stop double-checking the names of the goddamn twins. Suddenly we teleport back into the tent where Rob explains to Trish, after we're already an hour into the goddamn movie, that he's hunting Jason Voorhees, who killed his sister in the second movie. In the 4 or 5 days it's been, he did tons of research on the man, learning all about the first movie, and tracking the hulking menace down to this location.
Oh my god. Tommy's at the house.
As opposed to running around in the woods like you were doing. Chances are he's safer. Safer than the random group of teenagers anyway, as the remaining are either fucking or waiting to die. Which means Jason killed Jimmy, then ran outside, climbed up the house, pulled Tina out through the window, killing her, and then climbed back down the house, went back inside into the kitchen with Jimmy's corpse, got the knife, and then killed Ted. Okay, I know they kind of rushed the editing on this movie, but damn! In the meantime, the shower fuckery between Sarah and Doug has completed, meaning she can go off to dry her hair while he stays behind to wash up. Well, that sounds weird. But oh well, with the copulation complete, that just means it's time for Jason to get down to business. Jesus Christ, Jason, slow down. I'm running out of sarcasm. It looks like he was using some extra strength, Head and Shoulders. Ugh. This leaves Sarah as the one survivor at the house to finally realize, hey, there's a dead body here. That shouldn't be. So it's time for some terrified screaming, running, and being fucking murdered by the masked monster. And just still really gotta be careful with your edits and transitions, movie. It looked like fucking Tommy killed her there. Rather, now that Tommy, Trish, and Rob are the only ones left breathing, we suddenly switch over to them meeting back up with the dreadful news that their mother might have been picked off by a serial killer. They can't call for help because, surprise, the phones are dead. So Trish and Rob run over to Slasher Ground Zero to see if they're okay, while Tommy stays behind with the news clippings about Jason. Oh, and their dog? He just says fuck it and leaves the movie. Considering Gordon was named after another crew member's pet who had passed away, I can see why they didn't opt to have Fido join the pile of corpses. Of course, it just so happens that the teen's home is absolutely destroyed and littered with bodies. While exploring with Trish, Rob drops his butter knife down into the basement and decides it's best to go back for it. Strangely enough, this was incredibly stupid. Fucking Rob narrating his own death. I mean, yeah, it was based off of a real-life event where people heard a guy shouting at someone, "Stop murdering me," as he was literally murdering him, and no one went to help. And that was really disturbing and shit. But the problem is, every test audience that saw this scene burst out laughing. So he's fucking dead, leaving Trish and Tommy. Tommy's back at their place, though, so she retreats and begins nailing the door shut. As if that's going to stop Jason in any way, shape, or form. All that room for natural light doesn't feel so therapeutic now, does it? Hell, he doesn't even need to use the window. He just walks right through the front door. Literally. And chases the pair upstairs, where Trish thinks the best way to stop him is by barricading the door. Fucking goldfish. Strangely enough, this doesn't stop the maniac, so she goes for plan B. Alright, hell, it worked in Dream Warriors. So Jason seems knocked out, and of course they decide the smart thing to do is to try to slip by as slowly as possible, giving his Wolverine regenerating ass plenty of time to bounce back. Oh, he's not dead. Color me surprised. Tommy seems to be trying to distract Jason, but Trish says she'll call him off so the kid can run away. Getting him to come after her, Trish eventually goes straight for the window. Landing in a way that is somewhat believable that she would actually survive. Plus, look pretty badass. Also, panty shot. Everybody wins! While she continues to evade Jason, Tommy is working on Plan C. Utilizing his magnificent mask manipulation and the old newspaper clippings, he gives himself a speedy makeover to look like Jason used to as a child.
Jason! Jason!
Okay, so I get how wearing his mother's sweater might work in some situations, but how in the hell is dressing as Jason used to look supposed to get Jason now to stop and listen to you? I mean, did he have a habit of talking to himself? Did he even have access to mirrors? Obviously, this is just to distract him long enough so that Trish may get the upper hand. The unmasking? We've seen what Jason looks like 3 different times now. Okay, that is new. I didn't really expect him to be changed up to Mr. Clean after a horrible radioactive suds accident. But, of course, Trish dropped the machete like an idiot. Don't worry, the car-fixing, fuse-box repairing Tommy is here to save the day. It's said that they originally planned for a complete decapitation, but they decided against that just in case they wanted to bring Jason back at some point. And they still had the balls to call this movie the final chapter. Well, it's still going to be the final chapter if Tommy has anything to say about it. I still don't get the makeup. It doesn't look too Jason-y if you ask me. Tommy just looks like Pugsley in a mosh pit. But never mind making minced madman, happy ending! Trish is in the hospital recovering, but she's doing a hell of a lot better than Chris was at the end of the last movie. She's still very concerned about Tommy, though. The doctor assures her that it's perfectly normal that under that kind of stress he could exert this kind of strength, so it's fine, and she can see him just to be sure. But Tommy may be, in fact, another Jason just waiting to happen! Isn't literally, they never actually made a movie that actually explored that, as far as I'm aware. I don't know if they did anything with comics. That'd be interesting to look into. But anyway, that was Friday the 13th sequel bait. The final chapter. And it's okay. It's not great. There are some very good and interesting things going on here, mainly the Jarvis family and the Jason Hunter. They both worked off angles we really didn't see very much in the Friday the 13th series so far, and I wish they could have been explored in more depth. The thing was, we had a boatload of teenagers coming with nothing to contribute to the overall story outside of boosting up the body count. Not to say the teens were a total waste. They were well written and interesting in their own right, and had actual character development, unlike the group we got stuck with in Part 3. The problem there is the time we spent with the Jarvis family was the time spent progressing the actual story and lore, and the time with the teens allowed for the characters to interact and evolve over time, but didn't do anything with the plot. This almost feels like it was two movies shoved together, or more accurately, a really interesting idea for a new take on an old story, with the old stories being shoved into the script to make it feel more like a Friday the 13th film. At no point did the house full of teenagers not feel out of place, and that left the characters I wanted to see develop off-screen in limbo. Overall, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, is a well-put-together slasher movie. There's the potential to try for something with more aspiration in here, but it's never fully explored. However, the kills are creative, and there are some good shocks in here, coming in at 3 exploding cars out of 5. Not with flame, but with bodies. That is not helping my mental state. No. Thank you all for watching. I've been Shado. And remember, if you're carrying guns to kill Jason, keep one with you at all times. Like in the earlier movies. We all know that shit doesn't work forever.